So what we're going to work through today is all of the techniques that you have to use to be able to create a report and visualization like what we've got here. So through this visualization, what we can do is we can make any selection in the slicer, in either of these slices, and they're going to thread through to any of these visuals and then change the visuals for that specific selection that we're going to make. So all of these visuals are dynamic. They're not static. So we can go, well, instead of 30 days, we might want to actually look at 90 days. We might want to look at 180 days worth of information. We might also want to jump between profits or revenue. And you see how all of the visualizations change for the selections that we have made. Now, the interesting thing to note here is that these slices have no relationship to the underlying data model. So if you think about it, they're not from a customers table, they're not from a date table, they're not from a products table or regions table, for example. They're tables that we have made up, they're supporting tables that we have added to the data model to then utilize within our visualizations to create different visualizations that ordinarily we would not be able to create from a standard data model. So we're going to start from scratch here based on the same data model and then go through the techniques to actually develop these visualizations, these dynamic visualizations based on the selections that we make. Okay, so if we jump to the demo model here, the first thing we have to do is we need to work out our revenue and our profits. We need to develop these core calculations, these core measures. So if we first of all look at the data model, we'll see what we're working with here. So we've got dates, customers, salespeople, products, locations, and sales. And if we jump to the sales table, that's where we're going to do these calculations. You'll see that all we have here is a quantity sold. So we first of all have to do write in some logic to actually work out what was the actual dollar value per sale. And so if we come to products, you'll see here that we have a current price column, so we can actually utilize that and then work out what the total sale value was per each item that was actually sold. Okay, so we can do all this in measures, and this is great techniques just in itself. First of all, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create that measure and I'm going to call it, let's call it total sales in this case. And we need to use SumX here because we need to iterate through every single row in the sales table and then times the quantity sold by the price. And so I'm going to put sales here, and then I'm going to go quantity times related price, current price. Now that related allows us to go back up through the relationship up to the products table, and then I'm going to push enter, and then now you'll see that we've actually got this total sales result, and we can just associate, I can put that next to a product name, and you'll see that we'll start getting some results here, which is great, which is what we want. Okay, so now we've got our total sales, so that's essentially our total revenue. Now we can work out, we've got to work out our total profits. So we've got a few steps to go through to actually get that, so let's work through those. First of all, we've got to work out our total costs. Now we can do this because we have in the products table, we actually have a cost column. So we can use exactly the same logic here actually. We can copy and paste this measure, create a new measure, call it total costs, and then go SumX sales quantity, but instead of current price, we're going to call this costs, and then enter. And then now we have another measure that is showing us the total cost of everything, which is great. So what we can do, just to highlight that it's calculating correctly, we can actually put this in the table. This is what I always like to do, just to make sure that things are calculating correctly. And then we obviously want to do some formatting here. Probably actually want to turn this to a dollar value, obviously. A dollar format. Great, so now we are looking at per product, the total sales and the total costs. So now from this, we can actually work out total profits quite easily. So all we've got to do is go total profits equals total sales minus total costs. And then push enter, and then obviously make sure this is formatted correctly and drag that in, and you'll see now we actually have total profits. Cool, so now we can get rid of total costs here. Now we've got total sales and total profits. So we're on our way. Now we have to figure out how can we make these visuals dynamic. So we could slice this by date and that's fine, but what if you actually want to look at, you want to dynamically look at dates through time. So if we are sitting right today and we want to look at the last 7 days of information, we can write a simple function which does that for us. But what if we want to choose between different time frames? You want to say, well, I want to see the last 7 days, and then you might say, well, I want to actually see the last 30 days now, or I want to see the last 180 days. So you can't do that from a standard date table. You need to actually add an additional table and feed that into your calculations, which enables you to do that. So that's exactly what we're going to do. To create this new table, we have to somehow create it. You can create a number of ways, but I always like to use enter data because that seems to work fine in most cases if you're creating a table very quickly. So I'm going to call this date. I'm going to call this date range. Or actually we'll call it day range. We'll call it day range, and I'll go. I'm going to go 7 days. And so this is just going to be the This is going to be the slicer that we're going to create. And so I'm just typing in all the different days essentially that we want to look at information by. And then we'll go 365. And then we've actually got to put another column in here with days, because this column is going to be text. So we need to somehow sort this. We're going to have to eventually sort this somehow. And then 365, and then selection. Okay, so we've created the table, called it days range selection. I'm going to load it in. Now it says that it's trying to create a connection to the model, but one thing to note is that there is absolutely no connection to the model. This is just going to be a table that sits out on the side here. So now that we've done that, we can drag in our day range like so, and you'll see here that it's in this weird order. So the way we change that is we jump back into that table and we sort by the days column, and you'll see now it's in the right order, and we're going to turn this into a slicer. So now we have 7 days, 14 days, 30 days, 90 days, 180 days, 365 days, which is pretty cool. Now we need to somehow adjust how this looks based on that selection. The first thing we need to do is we need to work out, well, what are we actually selecting? Because we need to harvest that, what's called harvest it, and then feed it back in. So I'm going to go new measure, and I'm going to go day range. Now I can go values here. I can use values, and I can go by days. All I've got to do is put values days. But what we have to make sure is that if I go like this and I drag it in, you'll see that we'll get a result, which is fine, which is good. So we've got 14 days here, 30 days, 90 days, but we'll get an error if nothing is selected. So we need to sort that out. And the way we do that is we go if has one value, and then we're going to go, we can just go day range. So if only one value is selected in the day range slicer, then make that equal to the days. If not, we want this to equal 0 or some default value. So maybe we want to actually just say everything here. So what we want, interesting. So what we want to do here is we probably want to actually go count rows date table. So we actually want to say, well, if nothing is selected, just show everything forever. So that's probably a more safer way to do it. So if we take that off, you'll see the day range is actually 1000. So instead of saying 0 and getting basically nothing back, maybe we'll just show everything. Okay, cool. So this now works for anything, and we've got this day range selection that we can now use in our calculations. So we need to somehow determine what actually shows up in a date range based on this selection. So first of all, to highlight this, I'm going to put in the date here. And first off, this is in a really weird order, which we don't want. And let's actually get rid of some time here. Let's actually just go 2015, 2016, and 2017. Now you will note, if you're working through this example, which will be made available for download, that the information goes on through time. So it goes, actually there's information all the way to 2018. Now the reason for that is because obviously if I didn't do that, then this would stop working pretty, it wouldn't work, because you'd want to be able to get to, say, the end of 2017 and still have this model actually work. So that's the only reason why that is the case. Now we need to somehow create a calculation which only shows information for this range selected. So we need to create some logic, and we're going to create that logic by utilizing the calculate statement. So I'm going to create a measure that goes, let's call this total revenue, and I'm going to go calculate total sales, because we're still going to calculate total sales, but we're just going to only calculate it for a specific time period. And the way we can create that time period is we can use filter, and over the dates table we can say only show up dates which are from today back for the certain time period. So what we need to do is we need to go, if the date is greater than today minus the day's range, so our measure that we've created, which is this number down here, and if the date is less than or equal to today, then show us a result. So if I now just copy this across, copy this table, and add in my total revenue, you'll see now, I'll just change the format here, you'll see that this table now is dynamic. So it's actually going to change based on the selection of the slice we make. It's pretty cool, right? Now, it does this because what we've done with this filter is we've filtered out any date which doesn't sit within this range window that we've created for ourselves. And if a value returns blank, it doesn't actually come into your results. It doesn't show in your results. It's very much like a pivot table. So if we now just say select 365 days, we're going to see that this actually goes back. The very first day that we're showcasing is 9th of the 5th, which is 365 days before today, which is the 8th of the 5th, 2017. Now I want to show you something quite interesting, which I've just realized, is that if I select nothing here, you'll see that we only actually get one result, but we have 194 days in our day range. It's an interesting concept that we've come across that's very important to note. It's the concept of context transition. If we look into this formula here, you'll see that our day range, whilst it is 1,094 here, because of the way it is actually written when nothing is selected, as in count rows dates, what's happening here in this filter function is that this day range is evaluating to one day every single row versus the 1,094 rows in which it should. Now, a very quick way to fix this without going into details around context transition, because that deserves an entire series of videos in itself, what you need to do is you need to wrap the dates in all. And that means that you'll always, no matter where it's at inside this iterating filter function, you will always receive the total day range as we have here. Okay, so we've done a lot here, but we're slowly getting towards what we need. We've got we can go 7 days, jump to 90 days, jump to the entire date range of our sales, like so. Now, to make this multi-threaded, we want to jump between total revenue and total profits here. And we want to do it all within the same visual. So we've got to do a similar step in terms of creating a supporting table and then somehow integrating that back in. So I'm going to create another table here, and I'm going to call this one metric selection. And I'm going to go metric here, and I'm going to go revenue and I'm going to add profits here. And I'm going to put an index, and I'm going to go 1, 2, and then I'm going to load. Now, one quick thing I've actually realized is that we need to create another dynamic total profits calculation here, but it's not difficult. All we've got to do is copy and paste the logic we've already developed, and we're going to go and we're going to call this total all profits. We'll call all profits because we've already got a total profits in there. So all I need to do is sub in here, instead of total sales, I'm going to sub in total profits. And then we've got our all profits and we've got total revenue. So now we can jump back to we can go find our metric selection table. And if I drag the metric onto the canvas here, we can turn that into a slicer. It's not sorted the correct way, so we want to sort that first. So I'm going to find metric select and sort this by my index column. And now what we want to do is we want to actually select either of these and then have a value which changes for the selection that we're making. So again, what we've got to do is work out, well, what is actually selected. So the way to do that is like so, and then I'm going to call this metric select, and we want to go if has one value, metric selection metric. If it has one value, then equal that particular value. If not, we want to make this equal to blank. Okay, so now if I select, turn this into a card, you'll see that we can now get either profits or revenue, which is exactly what we want. Okay, so now we need to create this master. We want to create this master calculation where we feed these threads through it, and then now we can and then input that one final or master calculation into our visualizations. So to do this, we're going to call this metric result, metric selection result, and we're going to use the switch function, and we're going to switch true, and then we're going to say if the metric select is equal to revenue, then we want the result to be total revenue. If it is equal to profits, then we want this to equal to all profits. And if it doesn't equal any of those, we just want it to equal to 0. I'll close that off. And now, check this out. Now, if we use this measure within our table, first of all, we want to change this to a dollar, and I remove total revenue. You'll see now we've got this multi-threaded result or calculation. So we can select any time frame and any metric, and it's going to give us that result. Pretty cool, right? This is seriously cool stuff. And we can now use this measure in a number of our calculations. So we might want to look at this from a daily perspective, like so. But we might also want to look at this for our total products or any of it. We can now use this with any of our dimensions. So I'm going to add in my customer name here, and I'm going to change this visualization. Copy that. And we might also want to bring in, say, we might want to look at this from our product perspective as well. So I'll bring in that. Okay, so now we've used the same measure, this multi-threaded measure, and now we can click through and see, okay, well, let's have a look at our profits versus our revenue. Let's look at 180 days versus 7 days. And you see how you've got this dynamic visualization that gives you a range of different looks, but you can feed in a number of different selections or a number of different threads into it. And so this is just one example of the way you can use this, but there are so many different ways that you can utilize this technique. One of the ones that just stands out to me is, say you wanted to dynamically look at a ranking of customer. So you might well have your top 5 customers, or your top 10, your top 20, but then you want to be able to look at them versus from a revenue perspective, a profit perspective, a profit margin perspective. You might also want to be able to select a product and see how that ranks within those customer ranges or customer groups, etc. So there's a number of different ways that you can slice this. It's an incredibly it's an advanced technique, but incredibly powerful visualization technique that you can utilize within Power BI. So that rounds off how you can do this. Hopefully you can see the application and the various different applications of how you can do it. I'm really interested to see or hear about different ways that you might actually utilize this within your own analysis. So chuck those down in the comments below, and let's get a discussion going on how you can use this in a really powerful way, in a really meaningful way that creates value from your analysis.